Let's talk about Mexico, shall we? I think it's really important for us to cover what's been happening in Mexico and what Mexico is doing to the United States. In many ways, it's standing up to the tyranny that is the United States, the imperial power that is the United States, telling all of Central and Latin America and the Americas what they're going to do with that territory. We have a big update to a story that we first brought you at the end of July. We've been covering this throughout the spring and into the summer. We'll get there in a minute with this update, but first I want to give some context to this story. Now, you recall a few months ago, we covered the story here about the Americas, right? It was the Americas Summit, or the Summit of Americas, right?
Yes, where the United States was the host.
Yeah, the United States was the host. And
so they got to set the invitation list.
Right. And Mexican President Obrador, along with the Brazilian entourage, said, hey, we're not going to come. We're going to boycott the Americas Summit unless you invite every country in the Americas. Like, why are you leaving Cuba off the list? Why are you leaving Argentina off the list? Why are you leaving Venezuela off the list? They weren't invited. I guess we didn't think that they did enough to support democracy. That was the argument from the White House, right? That those countries didn't do enough to support democracy. Of course, remember, these are also the same countries where the United States actually literally tried to overthrow the same governments of these countries, right? Think about the Bay of Pigs invasion, right? Think about what we tried to do in Cuba. Think about what we tried to do in Venezuela. But they're the ones that aren't standing up for democracy, just to be clear on that. So I guess the way that you stand up for democracy is by fomenting as many coups around the world as you can.
Right, but in the same season, the United States went to Venezuela and said, we think you're pretty corrupt, but we want to start buying some oil from you, so let's start to have a friendship.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and then also at the same time tried to foment a coup in Brazil. You know, I mean...
What's what I'm saying? You create democracy by circumventing democracy.
Right.
Didn't you know that?
Yes. That's the way we do it.
Right.
You don't lead by example, I guess, in this way. So I guess they weren't American enough to come to the Americas Summit because they didn't start enough coups around the world. It was a big deal, but it also showed in many ways the crumbling power of the United States. I think throughout Central and Southern America, it shows the rising power of Russia and China. We've seen partnerships forming, and you're seeing a diminishing power from the United States in these regions. And Brazil saying, you know what? No, we're not going to denounce what Vladimir Putin is doing in Ukraine. That came today. He's saying, we're not going to do that. We're not going to denounce that. I know you want us to because we're in the Americas. You want us to do that. We're not going to do that. So you're starting to see a real shift. To me, it was a really big moment, and we might actually look back at this moment as a tipping point in world power, if not just in the Americas, when they said, no, we're not going to come. We're going to boycott your America's Summit. And old man Biden was like, okay, I didn't know anyone. I don't know who I'm talking to anyway. So I don't know who was going to be in the room anyway. So then you might recall here on the show, we covered the story about Mexico's president inviting Americans to come across the border, right, for cheaper gasoline. It was a bit of a joke, but of course, with all good jokes, there's truth in those jokes. He even made the joke once again when he visited the White House a short time later with President Biden when they had the state visit. And Biden was not pleased about the joke, apparently. Again, come across the border into Mexico because gas is cheaper here in Mexico. Just drive across to Tijuana and get your cheaper gas and your medications, by the way.
Yes.
And then just go back to America. Well, also the note we've been covering on the show, how many Americans are actually just moving to Mexico. They're not even just driving across and coming back. They're just moving there. Thousands moving to Mexico. So again, we charge less in Mexico for our citizens to get gasoline. So come here. And then we covered this story at the end of July after the New York Times reported this bombshell story. We thought it was amazing, so we covered it then. And here was the headline. The Biden administration will challenge Mexico's state control of its energy industry. What was it starting to do? It wasn't surprising that the United States once again was stepping up to be the bully in this situation. Here's how the Washington Post framed this story in their opinion pages. Mexico's energy policy gives the U.S. no choice but to push back. Oh, yeah. They have no choice but to push back. And if you actually read into the article, the United States and Mexico have plenty of tough issues to deal with, from the lingering coronavirus pandemic to inflation to the continuing surge of migrants through their mutual border. It would be best for both countries if they could address these issues in an atmosphere of calm and mutual cooperation, with no gratuitous irritations to this vital bilateral relationship.
Okay. I mean, they're brother and sister. They should just hug each other, right?
Right.
Get along.
Just get along. Don't stand up for yourself, Mexico. Let the U.S.
Forget about the
bully
wall.
Well, the issue here is that Mexican oil and gas is state-run, and the United States wants Mexico to open up for private industry, American companies, to do business there, right? So they are basically acting as lobbyists,
right,
on behalf of the oil and gas industry, which has record profits, has had for the first 2 quarters of 2022. Every oil and gas company that's American,
but they need more profits,
is doing just fine. But the United States is now lobbying on their behalf to be able to make money inside of Mexico.
right? Because of NAFTA and these agreements, right? You know, we need to these prices need to be on parity. That's what we're saying. That the prices in the United States are high, and what the United States is essentially asking Mexico to do is to open up their markets so that those prices will also be high. They want Mexicans to pay more for gas so that they equal what the United States citizens are paying for gas.
Yes. You can have cheap gas down there.
Sounds like a win-win for Mexico. Like, how do you take that phone call from the White House? Here's Catherine Tai from the United States. She says, we have repeatedly expressed serious concerns about a series of changes in Mexico's energy policies and their consistency with Mexico's commitments under the USMCA. Now, we've tried to work constructively with the Mexican government to address these concerns, but unfortunately, U.S. companies continue to face unfair treatment in Mexico.
Oh, those poor U.S. companies.
The oil and gas companies, they really need the United States to go to bat for them.
So Mexico controls their oil and gas, and they subsidize it through Pemex, which is their state-owned, and then Mexico basically subsidizes the oil and gas industry to reduce the average cost to Mexicans, so they're not paying as much. This is the idea, right? And the same thing, the same way we do that in the United States with certain things, right?
So we're saying to them, stop this state-run gas that is good for your people.
Right.
Let our companies in there so they can make money. And who cares what happens to your people if they're getting cheap gas or not?
Jay Thomas in our chat says, a coup incoming? Yeah. Yeah, anytime.
Isn't this the exact same scenario from Venezuela?
Yeah. Anytime you see this kind of stuff, like, wow, that's interesting that Obrador is suddenly thrown out of office. How did that mysteriously happen? So the U.S., but it makes Uncle Sam unhappy, this whole process. And it makes all those oil and gas lobbyists in Washington, D.C. super pissed off that Mexico is doing this because they want more money. So the U.S. oil and gas companies spend millions to lobby Congress to do their bidding. And then these companies don't like cheaper gas in Mexico. So, of course, now they want Team Biden to slap tariffs on Mexico. And Obrador is going to raise gas prices to keep them in parity with what Americans pay at the pump. That's the idea. So I think I summed it up.
Well, you know what that's going to do? That's going to set a precedent, and then the pharmaceutical industry is going to be like, wait a minute, we can do that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They're paying less for our drugs in Mexico than they are here? Yep. No more.
So I kind of teased at the beginning. I kind of buried the lead a little bit, but I wanted some context in this story. So we have a big update this afternoon on this story. And it's taken a deeper turn now that Mexico appears to be backing down to the United States. Not fully, but maybe you can read between the tea leaves here and tell me. They're backing down to both the United States and big oil and natural gas companies. So here's a statement from the Natural Gas Intelligence. This is from Mexico, their statement this afternoon. Mexico's energy ministry said it was postponing by 90 days this previously announced rule change in the national pipeline system. The new rules would require users to source their gas from Mexican state companies, CFE or Pemex, concurrently. This decision is being fought in the courts by at least 10 natural gas firms in Mexico. So those 10 natural gas firms, the private, want access to this market. And now Mexico is saying, okay, these changes that we were going to further nationalize it, further make it state run, further subsidizing it, further helping Mexicans, we're going to put this plan on hold because we're feeling the heat from the United States. We're feeling the heat
And all you
from
got to
these
ask
private
yourself,
companies.
what kind of deal did they offer them?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, how do you
Because there had to be some kind of deal.
throw your people under the bus by the pressure of the United States?
So I like that the original complaint, the original complaint is that individual companies, the government of Mexico is preventing the private companies in the U.S. from doing the business the way they want to do it. And then when the private companies in Mexico are like, we don't want anything to do with this, the American response is, but your government is going to make you.
Yeah.
Like it's like a complete flip of the script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just
And further, remember who pushed Mexico to nationalize their energy industry? Hillary Clinton. Remember, Hillary Clinton was the one that pushed them to move in this direction. So now the Biden administration is trying to completely unwind that and make them suffer. So here's the big update, is that Mexico is saying we're going to postpone this thing by 90 days, which you know what a postponement means. They're going to review it, and then they'll throw it out. And then Mexicans, I guess, can prepare to start paying more for gasoline because they're going to be walked on by the United States and the oil companies.
Like us.
Just like us. So yeah, hey, you can move back. You can move back to the United States now.
Because gas will be the same.
You cross the border, it'd be no difference. Yeah. So that's the very latest on that.